Hello, I'm Bob Russell. I'm the minister of music at Tree of Life Church in Danville, Virginia. And welcome to the 3-Minute Mile. May I have 3 minutes of your time today? Have you ever made the statement about a situation, well, somebody ought to do something about that? Well, I'm sure we all have. Well, I know of 2 people in the Old Testament who probably said this, and God heard them and answered them. In the Bible, we read about a man who called himself a nobody, the smallest, the least of all men, and his name was Gideon. And he said about the Midianites, I'm sure, somebody ought to do something about the Midianites harassing the people of Israel. Well, God heard him and renamed him somebody, and his life was changed forever. What about the Steve Urkel of the Old Testament? You remember Steve Urkel on Family Matters, don't you? Well, that's probably what David looked like before he became king of Israel. The Bible says David was the runt, the smallest of the family. And when Goliath was harassing Israel, I'm sure David might have said, well, somebody ought to do something about this 9-foot giant. Well, God heard him, renamed him somebody, and somebody did something about the giant, and David later became the king of Israel. I asked a friend a few years ago to go on a music missions trip with us to New Mexico onto the Navajo reservation. And while there, he made this statement about a church needing to be built in a remote area. He said, somebody ought to do something about that. Somebody ought to build a church. Well, God heard him and renamed him somebody. And this somebody the next year went without me into the desert country and built a church. And his life was changed also for the rest of his life. Well, how about you? Should somebody get up and do something about your life, your family, your relationship with Christ? Does God need to rename you as somebody? Here's a great poem. You probably may not have heard it the way I'm going to read it. Perhaps you have. One night I had a wondrous dream. One set of footprints there were seen. The footprints of my precious Lord, but mine were not along the shore. But then some stranger prints appeared, and I asked the Lord, what have we here? Those prints are large and round and neat, but Lord, they're too big for feet. My child, he said in somber tones, for miles I carried you alone. I challenged you to walk in faith, but you refused and made me wait. You disobeyed, you would not grow. The walk of faith you would not know. So I got tired, I got fed up, and there I dropped you on your butt. Because in life there comes a time when one must fight and one must climb, when one must rise and take a stand or leave their butt prints in the sand. Hey somebody, never give up. Hope to see you next week on the 3-Minute Mile.